Welcome to another edition of Google is Evil, formerly What the Fuck, and who knows what it'll be in the future. Shit, what do I do? How do I get out of here? Anyway, oh, just creepy. Life is creepy. That's my impression. Just saying, judging the book by its my 60 years of experience, yes, creepy. That's the consistent theme. Is it all kind of just gives me the creeps. Ugh. Ugh. Anyway, don't even want to. Just imagining. All the bad places it goes, and such. So anyway, so yeah, I did make one video again. Sorry, I was planning on doing other videos, but just didn't happen. So part two basically of the first video, except I threw in some extra bits. So we'll just jump through it and elaborate on the elaboration. Is actual something that can do good in the world, and you just don't want to waste it. There you go. So I was basically making a point about money, and that any time you're using up resources, you have to measure it and know that, gee, those resources could have been applied somewhere else. So it's in the context of, how much people spend an awful lot to, extend their life a little bit. And I would argue that it's a rational conversation to have about whether it would be better to help people deal with dying rather than try to evade an inevitable process, an inevitable moment in your life when you're going to have to just concede it's game over and I have to give up on what I'm wanting to do. And that you have to be in, the whole point is that, if I die at 50 or I die at 60 or I die at 70, I'm probably going to be equally uncomfortable with any one of those deaths. Even just because at those ages you still have ambitions, you still have projects, you still have something I haven't finished, you still have a bunch of undone stuff. And it's not until you start getting older and more disabled and more miserable and uncomfortable and physically pain-ridden that it becomes easier and easier to accept, I'm going to evade a whole bunch more of this horror. So it becomes, the balance of your equation becomes more obviously advantageous to die just because you're evading a big problem. And your life, there isn't this much ambition in you and there aren't as many projects because you haven't been feeling well enough to do anything. And so that's part of psychology. And so it's just recognizing that psychology is very destructive to your own welfare sometimes, in the sense that it forces you to cling when you really should be trying to relax your grip on your story and finishing it. It's hard to ever finish the story is the point, I suppose, right? I can always make another video and maybe it'll be more persuasive and maybe it'll be better and, that kind of thing. So there's always something keeping you in the game, which is, like I said, sort of masochistic psychology. I'd say, obviously it's just the fact that we take the intent out of it because we try to minimize, the negatives as part of our corrupt thinking. I probably could turn this down a little. Might be a little louder than it needs to be. Maybe, I don't know. Hard to tell. In fact, that would be very good for your civilization because it would give people. So I was talking about laws that are draconian and just this whole idea of creating the reward and punishment systems that work versus ones that don't work. And obviously I think it's really bad to have ones that are applied inconsistently and all this stuff, and that if you just for example made some law very, very harsh, then and made it a law about something kind of trivial, like littering. It's kind of a trivial act. It's not really like you need to litter. It's not like it's urgency. You know, it's not like even pissing on the street or something. It's, you know, there's no obligation to do it. And so it's a very easy behavior to modify or to not do. And therefore, if there's a draconian penalty, it would make people maybe more aware of why there are laws, and the fact that they usually don't exist for no good reason. Now, laws against dying with dignity, I'd say, do exist for no good reason. That's just obnoxious, religious, authoritarian bullshit. You know, tyranny. That's all that is. There are tyrannical laws where people are just imposing essentially the edicts of their religion on other people, merely because they resent other people having a freedom they don't have. So they want everybody else to be as restricted in their life as they are because of their religion, that kind of thing. Just really it's such poor behavior in a way. You know, to have laws forcing people to have manners, in a sense, by people who don't have any manners. You know, people who are merely against abortion because they know that it makes people more sexually liberal and free to have recreational sex. And so they're just they're trying to prevent recreational sex. They don't really give a shit about the fetuses or any of that crap. So it's funny that people are imposing an ethical code, and they really don't have any good ethics. Tell me a game player who would say that's the definition of my philosophy. Or yeah, so a little bit of crap about just the fact that there are people who are, you know, attempting to counter my arguments by assassinating my character, or trying to attempt to describe my philosophy that's basically very empathetic and is highly values pain and suffering, and trying to turn it into some, you know, maliciously violent or something philosophy. That somehow, because I will fight for the victims, that somehow I'm an aggressor, you know, that kind of thing. And that's all bullshit. Absolute bullshit. So on to the mystic and thou art that guy, and my attempt to counter arguments, I'd say, that are almost incomprehensible. I mean, the mystic basically not including the value of our sensations as part of a conversation about what life means, which doesn't make any sense at all. The meaning of life has to have some part of the discussion about the meaning of life has to include the fact that we're feeling robots, not just robots. It's a huge difference. Feeling robot, not feeling robot. Huge difference. How could you possibly say I don't think there's a real material difference between feeling good and feeling bad? Yeah, so I shouldn't have said material difference. That there is a mechanical brain difference, right? Your brain will have a different pattern when you're feeling bad than when it feels good. So the pattern will be materially different. The point is that there's not a significant difference in the universe between something that has the feeling pattern that says I feel like shit, and the feeling pattern that says, you know, I'm in bliss. Huge difference between those two patterns. Evolution or science would believe, but that doesn't mean they think it's insignificant. Feelings are insignificant. Yeah, so because science will give you a mechanical blueprint and say this is just the blueprint, it's just lines going this way and the circuit goes this way and the circuit goes that way, they're not saying the circuit doesn't do something. You know, that it does, like the calculator. Calculator's just made of diodes and transistors. They can't do any thinking. They can't do anything. But clearly, if you arrange them in the right way with the right buttons, you can make them, okay, into machines that are capable of some new thing, doing calculations. We do a kind of calculation. Our brain does a mechanical calculation, a mechanical electrical schematic of processing that does create this phenomenon we're calling consciousness. This I'm alive and I'm aware and I feel. And the fact is, it's synthesizing that out of calculators. For example. And they're not distracted by it. They're not in any way, it doesn't sit there and harm them. Right, so there's all these people talking philosophy, and they're really, they're talking about it as if, they're really not feeling anyone's pain or anything's pain, or really empathizing in any recognizable way. And so a whole portion of our reality that we exist in, they don't see it. Okay, so they don't lament or anguish or do any of the stuff that would be part of recognizing the value, the real value. So it's just like somebody watching the Olympic awards ceremony, and they're not accounting for the less than, all the people who are in 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th place, all the ones who didn't do their best performance for the TV show, and have lost out and won't get any big money and won't get any of this and won't get any of that and won't be any rewards for their 20 years of work and blah, 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 blah. They're not seeing the whole context. And so there's people talking about what life is, and they don't have any, there's no reality to their conversation because it doesn't include all of the brutal, harsh, awful, torturous death that is part of life. They're just not being fair to the real story. They're telling a story about a story and not getting any of the details right. And it's like talking about Freddy's nightmare movies or something and saying, well, Freddy has a wonderful hat. It's a great hat he's wearing in that scene. You're just missing the point. There's no bads in the universe. There isn't a feeling thing to experience bad. So it's just making the simple argument that all value is a consequence of feeling organisms existing or having the potential to exist. Without a feeling thing to cause a good or bad feeling to, nothing could ever mean anything. So until a feeling thing is in jeopardy of having a bad feeling instead of a good feeling, there's no value in the universe. There's no currency. There's no money. There's no anything. No diamonds. There's nothing. And it's only these exchanges that we're making. This is all the currency there is feeling things feeling good and feeling things feeling bad. The bad is what we're paying for whatever value the good has, the good feelings. And that's the real value territory. That way. Can't be both things. It has to be one or the other or neither. But you can't play the game. So it's just an argument about contradictions and how you can't have a contradiction in your logic. You can't say it's black and white and all that kind of crap. It's not good and bad. It's a total of something. There's a net product. There's, that's what logic requires, is there's a certain explicitity to it. It's specific and, and obviously the unspoken accusation I'm making is they're doing horrible logic.
As in, that if we were a soul, then I could believe that we could.
Okay, so he's saying if we were a soul, so we see this is the dichotomy that the modern mystic creates, is between religion, the belief in souls, and then he says science says it's a matrix, it's a dream state of some other being. I mean, his alternative is more religious than the religion. So, in my opinion, it's a terrible statement about the real difference between people. There are people who believe life is intrinsically purposeful because it was created with some sort of intent or intelligence, and those who understand it's just a mechanical consequence of the evolution of chemical compounds, and that all of the manifestations of that. And the funny part is the scientific explanation tells you why consciousness is possible, in terms of the fact that it's creating a very complex machine, calculator, that calculates the consciousness, that creates it as part of the processing. And that has a consequence. And in the context of evolution, the context of a system that basically says kill 99 to perfect in some way the one, brutally harm 99 things as long as you preserve and make better this one thing. It's an obviously flawed plan, okay, because it's not intelligent. It wasn't designed intelligent, so obviously it's not wise or smart or good, because it couldn't know the difference between good and bad. Nature's dumb, not smart.
Because we are only projections.
So again, obviously we can know we're AIs, we're artificial. Right, so the mystic is saying there's no one to know. Clearly we are individual processing machines that can take in information, hold that information, manipulate that information so we can know. There's a knower. There's a calculator that's calculating with different numbers than the other calculators, and it comes up with different answers and all that kind of stuff, and that's a knowing. There's no way around that. You do it well and you know the right answer. You do it poorly and you get wrong answers. You get wrong answers describing what the physical reality is. Again, the physical reality, that's the universe we exist in. There are clearly different answers to a question. Evolution created it. It's just mechanical. It started with very elemental little particles bouncing into each other and has evolved the complexity over time because there was a place to do it, a place quiet enough in the universe to do it. And this is just merely the product of a branch of potential complexity. But I would argue that we can also know scientifically it's not a branch you're likely to ever build, because there are so many one-time events involved in what made our branch that you'd have to roll these dice 1 trillion times before you could expect anything coming close to the rareness. It's, again, I've compared it to rolling dice and having the dice stack on top of each other. It's a very unlikely event. You got to roll a lot of dice before you get there. It's likely you would have to roll a lot of dice. You're just saying the neuron endowed organisms have the blight of so just making a simple point that that's all there are. There are these certain little creatures in the universe on this planet Earth that have evolved a neuron, first a DNA molecule, first a nucleic cell, all the little one-time events that had to take place before. And then it has these neurons. The neurons create an ouch, and now there is something in the universe to be worried about. Because now something can be doing this good and bad thing. There's no good and bad until you show up with a feeling thing that can go ouch. That's the bad. Alright, and the good is preventing the ouch, frankly. There really isn't any good in anything else. And that all of our positive sensations are, generally speaking, made out of the elimination of all our negative potential. sensations. Frankly. I think that's about it, but we'll go to the last little bit. We'll feel anything based on this action. So just pointing out that you can have actions in a universe that doesn't have feeling things in it, and how could the action possibly matter? And the action can only matter when the implication will affect something that can have a feeling, period. And that our thoughts connected to our feelings, that is our desires, although valuable, they really are deconstructible, as maybe they're not desires worth you having gratification to them because it's too expensive. What you desire might be taking too much. So your desire to see human beings on Earth 1,000 years from now, that perception that that would be a good thing is built on your acceptance of the huge price some of those creatures will pay for that reality, and especially how much the biosphere will pay in terms of all the other mammals will endure a lot of sad stories in that 1,000 years. And you can make it 1,000,000 years, or you can make it 1,000,000,000 years, and you just add up how much negative there is, frankly. How horrendous a price you paid for so little in terms of anything that was a real accomplishment, a real improvement in the condition of the universe. So anyway, I think that's enough. I mean, so look, the argument is the pain has real value, the pleasures are trivial, and the amount of time sentient organisms on Earth spend in terror is far outweighs the amount of time they spend in bliss. And then there's a lot of mediocrity, the floating in the middle somewhere. But on balance, it's not a profitable game to play. More losers than winners, and the losses are of greater proportion than the trivial victories and such. That's my claim. The Olympic champion is not worth paralyzing a kid. It's just a fact. And your little moments of bliss are not worth the real price that's paid for them. Alright, so that's the premise being argued and defended through these metaphors and analogies and attempts to reason with you about your expectations that the universe would be sensible and functional, when of course it doesn't have any capacity to be any of those things, because those things require knowledge of good and bad, right and wrong, efficient, inefficient, and there's nothing in the natural system that could have that intelligence, that knowledge, that understanding, that the complexity necessary to see those differences. Yeah. No, it's probably enough. Okay. So, so till the next time and such, and so forth and whatnot, and blah, 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 blah. And I will try to make more relevant content in defense of this basic premise that life be bad, okay, and see how it goes, and such. So, till the next time. So long. See ya. Blah, blah, blah. Probably could end better than that. This has been a DoNotGod.com video presentation. Well, that's probably better yet. Some canned response. Some canned ending. is all part of the psychology problem. Our psychology is just so mushy that, you know, it's work to do anything, you know, to try to do it in some disciplined, ordered, concise, manufactured, careful way. It's all work. It takes way too much time, frankly. Too much to do, too little time to do it in. Alright, now that's more than enough. So, till the next time and such.